Okay, here's what we're starting with. If you recall, this is something we cobbled up real fast to put an alternator in place of a generator on our 1950 tow motor. Just kind of tack welded, booger welded in places here, just to get the fit right. I wanted to make sure that alternator would fit in here, and just round those off with a grinder. This is just a bunch of scrap steel. Like I said, go check that video out, and you kind of see how we got to this point. This is totally functional as is. I really don't need to do anything else to it to make it work. It's got slots for adjustment in it. This mounts up nice. But this extra metal across here, it's just along for the ride. It just makes it heavier. It doesn't do anything. And hey, let's dare to be different and try to slick it up a little bit. What I got started here, if you see these silver lines on the back that I've marked ahead of time, is I basically took a 45 off of where the tabs, the sliding adjustment part is, and ran it off to the edge. And then if you look kind of straight down the barrel here, I guess, I just continued that line, whatever angle that was, over to where the first little mounting lug here for the bottom pivot of the alternator is. So, this is a 45-degree angle. This is whatever it worked out to be. So what we'll get is kind of a blend across there. From this to that, because I don't want to square corner, because we'll get a stress riser in there, kind of fade away from this to that, and we'll fill all this off with the grinder and make it look pretty. And we're going to kind of do, first things first, we're going to kind of do more or less the same thing on this edge here. The only difference being is I'm going to continue this back into this corner. So I'm going to cut two little pieces, one to go into here, in between here, and one to go over here to kind of cap this off. And I'll let those have a straight corner. It's not my preference, but I may not. We'll see. We'll see how I feel when I start cutting it. But regardless, we're going to cut this down too. I could fill that in if I wanted to and kind of add some to it, but I think it would look just as good if I radius this off and just kind of pull it down there. But I don't know. If I'm going to spend time to make it look different, better, I may add some material back into it. But this is the first thing we're going to do. So let's go. One thing I did leave out here is it's kind of hard to cut. I want to cut as much of this as I can on the bandsaw. It's kind of hard to cut it like this. It doesn't really rest flat on there. I could, build something to feed it in there safely. But what I did was I just took the cutoff wheel and cut a slot right along my line on the backside here so I could see it on the other side. And once again, just connected the dots. So that way now I can put it in the bandsaw and cut it on this flat surface here. And that's a whole lot easier than trying to grind it up on its toes or cut it up on its toes like this on the edges, especially with this. Not impossible, but way easier to do it this way. So I just basically transferred it from one side to the other. There's other ways of doing that, but this was fast, and it got part of it cut that I wanted to cut out anyway. Okay, well, here's what we got so far. Now, I did cut that long section here with the bandsaw, but I cut this with the good old cutoff wheel. Nothing fancy. This is a, you know, this is a decent grinder. 20 years ago, it's a 4-inch Makita. About time to get a new wheel, but yeah, you know, everything's 4.5 or 5 now. But that's why I got it, because it was cheap. But it did the job. You know, just basically cut along this line that we left from here to here. And second step was get my super cheap Campbell Hallsfield or whatever. Yeah, I think that's what it is. I don't think this is from Harbor Freight, but it's the equivalent. Not a lot of money in these things. They're almost throwaways. I got a couple of them, and then I break one, and I build 1 out of 2. Spend your money, or at least this is my tip. Spend your money on the abrasives. The tools are just kind of a commodity, so you might get something that you can give your grandson, but you'll spend a fortune on that, and this is where the money's at. This is where all the work's going. I suppose if you're a tradesman, you're doing it every day, that doesn't apply, but these have been working, knock on wood, for a little while, or a long while, and haven't had any trouble yet. So anyway, back to what I did. Basically cut that apart. You see our ugly piece of scrap here. I cut that apart, and then just kind of blended this in, and I'm not done. Blended this into, you know, this welded piece here, and then on around, and so I kind of going for a full radius around this here. Like I said, not done, but you know, got it pretty smooth. I mean, you can see the way I'm going here with it. I'm trying to slick it up a little bit, and we'll go over the whole thing like that. There's some gaps here and there where I welded it just to get it in position. So we may go back and kind of kiss that with the welder and kind of fill it in. But I'm going to do all that at once, because you end up fighting it back and forth, grinding off spatter and whatnot. So we'll get it all smoothed up. Still want to round this off really nice and get this in. You know, I'm going to work one side to the other, so I don't have a bunch of stuff kind of halfway done. But we'll do that next. But what I wanted to say about using a grinder, or, you know, any kind of abrasive like that, really, people tend to like go crazy and stick it down in one spot, and the whole point is to cover your tracks. So I mean, do it like you're painting or you're sanding. You know, I mean, start in the same spot, try to use the same speed, and finish in the same spot. Just keep going over it. You know, eventually you'll get to a point where you knocked all the high stuff down. You know, keep checking it, keep looking at it, and you can smooth it out pretty good if your eyesight's there, which mine is fading, but you can get it smoothed out pretty good, and get a pretty good blend if you just take your time. People want to go crazy and say, I got all this power, I'm just going to burn this down. Well, everywhere you start and stop, that's the thing. Don't start and stop. Everywhere you start and stop, you're going to see that, and then you got to go even deeper to hide it. So just, you know, if you're grinding an edge, just start off the edge and go past the end. Like I said, just like you're painting. You know, you start off, you end off. You know, and you keep your travel speed consistent, and just keep moving that track a little bit further down and going in line, back and forth, smooth motion. You know, sanded floor, Daniel son. Okay, next step is to kind of radius these corners. The way I do that stuff, I need a guide. I didn't on this, I just freehanded it, but you know, try to make it look good if you can. What I did is I just grabbed through my stash of washers and found one that I could put over that hole and kind of draw around it. So basically what I'll do is, you know, I'll grind away the mark, and then I should be on this radius here. The kind of funny thing is you know, this shares the same center, which if you don't, it looks kind of funny if you just go and round it over. If it doesn't really, well, maybe that's preference, but if it doesn't really look like it kind of comes out of the same center point, it kind of looks off balance, at least to me. So this one up here is going to be right on, and unfortunately this one is farther out, so this smaller diameter here won't affect this this edge here. So I got a bigger one so I could slide it out, which it goes past the edge here, but it'll affect the edge here. Probably hard to see, but you can see some kind of blue and silver marks on there. The reason I did that is because this stuff was powder coated when I got it. Well, this part had like, oh, shoot, I don't know, like that electrostatic primer stuff. This was part of a shipping crate. This was a powder coated bracket, but the silver shows up good on the black, but it doesn't show up so good on this kind of grayish steel looking color. So that's why you get multiple colors of Sharpies. Silver Sharpies are not cheap, but they work really good. You'll see a lot of fabricators use those to mark on stuff. Chalk's good too. If that's all you got, it'll go down there, but you can wipe it off pretty easy. I put it in both. I marked silver and gray on this so I could see it. And I know you guys probably can't see it, and it's going to be hard for me to see it, but I think if I, use the force and focus on this really good, get some good light, I can get it rounded off. And, if I can't, I freehanded that pretty good. So we're gonna do that next. Go over to the bench grinder and round these over. Okay, I couldn't stand it. We are going to add a tiny piece right through here. This is our scrap that we cut away earlier. I'm going to kind of bridge this over to here, and it's not even a full corner. It's going to be from this point maybe to the middle of there, but I'm not going to try to cut a patch in there. I'm just going to tack this in place, kind of in between, and cut it, and then we'll finish weld it after, because definitely trying to cut through stuff with any kind of a saw blade is pretty hard cutting through weld. It's just not easy. So don't do that if you can help it. You got to grind that stuff down. So we're just gonna like pop a little tack here, and maybe I'll move it in the vise and hit it down a little lower. But I just don't want it to move. I'm just gonna get it in there to where it won't fall out, and then we'll cut it again with the bandsaw or something, and we'll finish welding it in later. Let's hit it one more time on that other side. All right, let's level those out a little bit, those welds that we just made, so we can run it through the bandsaw and cut that corner off. All right, let's fill in some more of the gaps with some scrap we got here. we'll grind that down and cut that off on the bandsaw and be ready for the next one. All right, well, we plugged up some of the gaps with the welder here, where there was a, burn mark or didn't fit up good, but we'll grind those all down and you'll never see them. Then did get the patch put in here and cut that off with bandsaw, as you saw, and kind of bridged over that. We'll fillet that off with the grinder and radius this here will come out nice and smooth like we did on this side here. The last thing we really got to do additive wise is kind of bridge this gap right here. If you notice, I did have to kind of cope this out to fit in there, this width here, to keep it in line with the one that's lined up with the bottom. Since this one sits on the top, I had to cut that kind of groove in there. So on our patch, we're going to have to do the same thing. We're going to have to cut a little sliver across here, and we'll fit that in there. When I was making this, it was all engineer on the fly. Should have run it back to the back in the beginning. Didn't know where I was going to end up, and it's a case of woulda, coulda, shoulda. But we're going to fix it now, and then we'll grind it all up, and it'll look pretty good, and we'll be ready for the next step. Here's a good tip for a push stick. This is Machine Tools. I can't remember what they make. Like heat grip tool holders or something like that. I don't remember. I went to a seminar for them, but they make great stuff. But this tchotchke here, it is just not a really good scraper. It ain't their fault, but you know what it does pretty good? it's a pretty good push stick. So that's what we're doing here. Well, there you go. That's the general shape. We got the all the patches put in. We got some of the corners rounded off, you know, front and back, top and bottom. Not worried about the backside too much. Might have to pop a little bit of metal in here to smooth it out, but it's not bad. I mean, you know, want to make it look as good as presentable or as possible and make it presentable, but you know, in reality, the alternator sits right here. You really won't even be able to see the bolts until I powder coat this safety yellow, which that's our next step on this journey to dare to be different with this little alternator bracket. I got an old Eastwood hot coat system. It's like the original system that they have. Still works great. It's a low voltage unit, but I got some safety yellow powder. So we're going to file and clean and slick this up as best we can. Powder coat does hide a multitude of sins. It lays out, flows out pretty good, but if it's rougher than a cob, you know, it's not going to perform a miracle for you. And this has got some spots that it just isn't going to cover, these big pock marks in here. And that's what I'm going to focus on, and we'll slick up, you know, some of this kind of clevis piece here. But I'm not too worried about it. I mean, this is going to be the beauty side right here, and then maybe a little bit of this kind of gusset area in there. But we'll get into that with my little mini belt sander and you know, the flap discs, and we'll shine it up, and that'll be something we can be proud of. So that's another one in the can. We'll see you next time on Smith Motorworks. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. As always, do that homework. Later.